This episode is brought to you by Mortgage Workflow Partners and the Mastering Encompass series, both for users as well as administrators. You can find out all the information about it over at masteringencompass.com. Also, if you'd like to check out what we're doing on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel using the @MasteringEncompass handle. And make sure you stay up to date on all the information, not just with podcasts, but also video content that we bring to you as often as possible. Now let's get on to the episode.
It's Tuesday, 4 o'clock. Every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern, we get together as a community. And today I start a 12-part workshop series where I'm focusing in on what would I do if I were going to create my own mortgage company? What would I use in terms of native Encompass functionality? How would I build it? And the reason why I want to go through this workshop really with you as my community is because I find that there are a lot of people that really feel that you need to leverage third-party technology to get the best effect as terms of mortgage operations. There is no doubt that there are a ton of things that native Encompass can't do because it's not designed to do it. I think it's also important to remind everyone that the average Encompass shop out there that uses Encompass, whether it's a bank or a credit union or independent mortgage banker or even broker, those average companies are closing less than 50 loans a month. They have a part-time admin, and yet they're still making money. And so those are the same companies who really the idea of going out to some third party and spending some more money, it's not really on the table. And so what do I do about that? Well, the good news is now Encompass, whether you're using desktop interface or web interface, Encompass can do more now than ever before. I'm obviously a big workflow guy. I always believe in workflow before technology. And I thought it'd be a great idea to go and create a workshop series, which is what this is, to really explain how would I do it, what would I use, and to intentionally stay away from all third-party software. And that's not because it's for any other reason that I want to really exploit what I'm paying for versus turning to something else. So having said that, for everyone who's attending, if you are here today, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to try my best to keep on schedule here and talk for about 35, 40 minutes and then leave it open for open Q&A. Having said that, there's a chat feature in the Teams meeting here. There's a Q&A feature. So as you have any questions, please let me know. And I'm going to do some screen sharing here. I also want you to be aware, I'm going to be sending out a link if you want to register for ongoing workshop series with regards to the whole thing. We're going to package this up into one special course for those that want to participate. If you're watching this replay and you want to see everything in terms of replay, so more to come on that. But for right now, let's talk about the very basics. Which, when we talk about the first part of this workshop series, we're talking about leads, right? And so the structure of this really is focused around, for today's meeting, is the very beginning. If that's not your thing, if you think for whatever position you hold in your company, if we can't figure out who to talk to, we're not selling anything, right? And so when it comes to leads of mortgage operations and who they're talking to, they're folks who are thinking about borrowing money. Obviously, they're borrowers. And so this idea of, well, what can we use in Encompass to really manage that? I'm going to talk about that. But before we get there, I want to talk about what we're not going to use. We're not going to have to use a separate CRM. We're not going to have to use a separate marketing platform. We're not going to have to use some of the old school methods of leveraging like Excel sheets or other things that typically companies that don't want to invest in other technologies will use. And so I want to speak to what's available in Encompass and what would I do. I'm going to go ahead and share screen here. 1 second and bring this up on screen. So when we let's go over here and I will go and share. So if you're using Encompass right now, obviously you should be thinking about encompass.ice.com. When I go through and focus on this conversation, a lot of times what I'm hearing from other clients that I guide down this path is they've got some other type of portal to collect borrower information. And when I look at what is possible in terms of collecting borrower information, the first thing, of course, that we're going to focus on is Consumer Connect. Now, when it comes to Consumer Connect, a lot of folks will immediately think of applications. And I'm going to guide you down a different path. So when I go over and I look at, I'm going to bring up a Consumer Connect portal, and I'm going to talk about what's possible with Consumer Connect from a lead generation and lead effectiveness perspective. So let me go ahead and bring this up, and we'll go over here. And so when we go into Consumer Connect, one of the things that I want to really focus in on is what is the difference between there we go, this is what I want. What is the difference between a full website to collect leads or not? What is the difference between using the loan application customization tool that's in Encompass or not? And really, it comes down to how you want to manage your business. One of the things that I'm going to encourage you, again, for those that are watching and learning how to really move into lead aggregation and leveraging Encompass Native in this way, is you have to be able to capture that borrower's information as quickly as possible with the least amount of friction. Why is this important for us in this audience? A lot of times we're disconnected from this conversation with our marketing teams and our sales teams. And so what I try to advocate for is the quicker you can get somebody to get their information submitted to your company, the better. And there's two basic ways to do that, right? The first way is you can create a lead capture on your own website, and it creates a form, and that goes over to somewhere that needs to go, again, Excel sheet, some type of CRM, these kinds of things. What I would rather you do is I would rather you go into creating some type of Consumer Connect site. And in this particular situation, I would simply have a website that clicks apply now. And when we come into our workflows, it's really important to understand that when we develop these Consumer Connect workflows, we can have multiple iterations of this. So in this particular example, this is the loan application customization tool. If you're not familiar with this, this came out not too long ago, and this allows you to create completely custom applications on Consumer Connect. So if you wanted to have an application on here that just had 5 basic pieces of information, and then they click submit, do it. It can be very clean and simple. If you haven't seen this before, definitely go back to the release notes. If you want to have this added to one of your Encompass websites, you can. Craig, I'll take you off of mute. I don't know if you have, I took you, you can unmute yourself or you can type in a question. Looks like you have a question.
Yeah, hey,
just
Larry,
saying hi?
can you hear me?
Oh, wait, I've got to now take you off of, sorry, Greg, what do you got?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I was just wondering, with this customization tool on Consumer Connect, right? Can you add like rules to say make questions appear based on an answer to a previous question, sort of thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's the general concept. You can see every time and again, this is probably me. But when I go in and I try to come into this section, it's not that one. We go back to my other one, WP, loan app workflows. There we go. So I haven't used this personally, but the idea of this property showing up under which condition, you can create these kinds of conditions for these controls to appear, but I cannot give you any personal experience. I have yet to do this for any client. It's just too deep. I just haven't found a live example of this. But that's the intention, is to give you that ability to decide which fields show up. So every time I click that damn thing, I should stop clicking it. But hopefully you're getting the idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Why mine breaks is just my day. But yeah, that's the concept, because this is, if this looks very familiar to you, if you've already started working with Encompass Web Input Form Builder, it should seem very familiar. But when you come over into your form elements, I would encourage you to check it out, see where it leads you if you need something very specific. And to what Craig, thanks very much for asking that question. To what Craig's talking about is, again, can you define this? Yes, there are conditions in here that can define that. Can you create more? You're supposed to be able to. I just can't, for whatever reason. That's my benefit of doing a live demo. But this is one of those things where you need to explore the functionality, because we're in Consumer Connect and we're in this domain. If I were to switch this domain and go over into a different one, I can go over and select, that's not what I want to do. I want to go over into low nav workflow, and I can come over into this traditional workflow within the same Consumer Connect. Guys, there's nothing, I'm not aware of anything else that's out there that gives you this capability and flexibility at your own fingertips. I'm sure that there's something out there that maybe does or mimics some of the same functionality that's provided by a third party. Sure, it's possible. I'm not aware of it. And so what I like to do with with our mortgage workflow partner clients, as well as if it were my company, I want to be able to have the opportunity to do this on my own. So that if I were to go through, earlier today in the admin coaching and certification course, we went through, like, why do we need different sites? Why do we need this? And my direct answer was, if I want to create a custom experience for a co-branded relationship, not only can I do that with my web-based application, but I can also do that with my mobile application. And so I'm going to talk about this part next. We've got the ability to create these different websites that can have whatever I want on here that's obviously, correct by regulatory standards. But I can also come in and I can define that experience for my mobile. So if I go over into my pages and I go down into my mobile experience, I can define this to be whatever I want for this specific domain, for this specific site ID, and it can be completely unique from this, right? If I go into pages, I can come over, you can see that there's no mobile app for this site ID, versus this one there is. This is one of the biggest things that I would lean into if I were going into business for myself right now, because I can go and tell my marketing team, hey, if we want to do a co-branded deal with some real estate agent or some builder somewhere, or if I've got a particular DBA, I can keep spinning these up as many as I can support. And so that's the reason why I bring this up. I also want to reinforce that the mobile app is not a POS. It's not a way to say, hey, download my app and then apply online. Don't want that. What I want is the ability to create these websites and make the application process as frictionless as possible so I can get those leads. One of the pieces that happens when we end up having someone start an application is we can come over and we can view everything that's incomplete. And I can do that on the, let's go over to this one. I can do that on the, let's go to all, on this part and by domain. So I can split that up as much as I want. I can also see the same thing with Encompass Web. So if I were a loan officer, I could go to prospects and I could live there and I can see all of my incomplete applications, which will spin up here in a moment. There's these three guys, which are the same three here. And so what's important for me as a salesperson is I want to be able to get to the people really quick. And if they've gone to our site, so I can contact them. When it comes to prospects, obviously they're here, or if they're here, I can take appropriate actions as a loan officer if I'm looking for them. But now when I go through and I have somebody immediately complete a 5-question application or 5-question contact form, everybody may remember Rocket Mortgage, push button, get mortgage marketing genius that it still connected them to a live human being. And again, for my company, what I would want to do is speed the contact, because it is documented. It's scientifically proven that the faster you get a borrower on the phone, the higher the probability of your connection, number one, and your ability to potentially create that relationship and hopefully close that loan is also substantially higher than waiting. And the difference can be literally 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a mark. If you can get them within a minute or 2 minutes of interacting with a website, again, I don't know the exact graph, but it's very high probability of following through on that lead. So with my company, when I'm talking about capturing these leads, to me, it's not about a CRM or anything like that. It's about my website and having people show up and as easily apply as they can. Good news is with Consumer Connect, if you wanted to have an additional workflow that allowed for a more complete application, you can. If you wanted to have the ability, I'm going to try this again and go back to websites and get out of this one and go to this one. If we wanted to have the ability to go into a workflow that allowed for things like the ability to order services. So when we come in and we wanted to make sure that we had the ability to, here we go, all of our instant verifications, you can. This is not for everybody. But if I've got a workflow where I wanted lights out, there's a lot of companies that are leveraging the VOE, VOI settings, or they're allowing for asset verification, right? Or they're allowing their borrowers to run a soft pull to figure out how to route that borrower to the right group to speak to. All this stuff is in, and I can define this by the individual website. For me, it's super cool. I think it's an underutilized feature that's native to Encompass. You already have it. You may not be using it. And these are the kinds of things that, again, may be possible in other platforms. I don't know. But what I know is I'm already paying for this, so I'm going to leverage the crap out of this. All right. So as we go through this, the next part gets over back into, if I can find my Encompass web. There it is. I'm going to start talking like an admin for a second. So if anybody's part of this meeting that's not an Encompass admin, bear with me, replay, have your admin come back to this replay. But I want to talk about workflow management. When you're in sales, again, this is a 12-part workshop series, and this is all about lead aggregation and working that lead through towards a more effective communication. One of the things that we need to have as salespeople are reminders of who to contact when. And as businesses, we also need to move that lead from one person to another, depending on situations. So, number one, how do we define that? What do we have at our fingertips now native to Encompass? Got workflow rules. One of the things that we can do is once that loan is in there and created, we can do loan created stuff. And we can do, if nothing else has happened, whatever that means, and we can do results such as notifications, right? We know this. We can actually send out a notification. We can start a scheduler that says, hey, listen, if this file isn't yet credit run in a day, do something else. We can also send out a document to the borrower that says, hey, thanks for applying. I'd love to get to know you better. Maybe you can send me your pay stubs, right? We can request things. We can send things. I'm using all this, guys, in my fictitious mortgage company. because this is ultra powerful when it comes to connecting the borrower to you amongst everybody else that they're potentially talking to. Some of the other things that are important in workflow rules are also going to be the ability to create tasks. So I want to be able to, I don't have it in here, but pretend one of these says call borrower right now, right? Obviously, we're going to send a notification, but maybe it says qualify borrower or whatever. Especially if it happens to be from a particular site ID, maybe there's a certain task for a builder or a real estate agent that you want to distinguish from the source of that lead. And you can do that in your condition statement here, right? By choosing which notification template goes out based upon the templates that are available. So these are some of the, these are just some of the ideas that when I started to see what workflow rules could do in connection with what I can do with Consumer Connect, to me, it all just makes sense. These are the things that really light me up in terms of what I can do. I'm going to go into more detail. So Candace asks, does Consumer Connect have the ability to generate a survey at the end of the app process? So when we talk about email notifications, one of the things you have is loan submission email that goes to the borrower. Good news is, Candace, you can do whatever it is that your heart desires on here because it's full HTML. When you come into this, if you wanted to insert dynamic fields, you can. If you wanted to insert other links, you can. So if it, in terms of a survey, I don't know if that's going to a survey tool. For me, if I was getting into a survey tool, I'm probably launching that into a CRM if I'm using it, but that's not really lining up with my workshop strategy here, but that's one of the things you can do. An idea. Great question. But yeah, you have this email notification going out as going directly to the borrower, which is what you want. Okay. Cool. Email sent to the applicant, so you have that up there. So when we get into some of the pieces like I was talking about with these in here, the create tasks is a powerful mode for my sales team. And the reason why for me it's this powerful mode is because not only do I want to make sure that my sales team has an active list of tasks that are due or overdue, but I also have the ability to add comments. One of the things that is critical is to make sure that not only are we say we're doing stuff, but I also want to leave comments during the work that I'm doing, not only for myself, but also for anybody else that's reviewing. Sean asked, Larry, have you heard if ICE is planning to offer built-in co-branding in Consumer Connect? How about if the portal where it pulls the borrower's agent from file contacts? Sean, can you come on mic and talk to me about this? I don't know if you have a mic where you are. Let me know. Give me a thumbs up or whatever. Let me see. So anyway, yeah, Sean, let me know if you can talk or not. I'll take you off. I'll allow Mike in there. So if you want to come off, you can. Because I want to talk to you more about what your question means. Oh, you can at the moment. Okay, no big deal. So I'm just going to interpret. There's no built-in co-branding because you can do it yourself. Like when I go through and I build a website out, this domain, I can make this domain to be whatever I want. And if I wanted to customize it even further, I could. So the co-branding part, when it gets to like this thing over here, the co-branding is related to the site ID. And the site ID, we can make whatever I want, which is why this is so powerful, in my opinion, because I can have my team, my company make a deal with a marketing deal, and we can co-brand this whatever is appropriate and allowable, and it can be completely independent of what I'm doing at the corporate site. So ICE doesn't really have to do anything. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that means, but in the portal after the borrower applies, can we like include other people in the notification? Maybe that's what you're thinking. When we go into the email notifications, you know, in terms of like loan submission email, you can come in here and include a CC. Now, how does that get defined? No. You know, I'm not quite sure, but you have to free type in what you want to do, which could be just that partner, right? Sean says like an easy button toggle on and off. ICE generates a unique link to agents. Some wholesale investors do this, some brokers. Yeah, I don't know, Sean. I couldn't tell you. I haven't heard anything about that. I'd love to understand it more when you have more information, or if you want to talk about it directly, let me know. Candace says we're big on seeing what the borrower thought of our application process. Blend serves up a customer survey. I mean, I guess that's good for you guys, Candace. I haven't seen it. As far as Blend, which is a third-party platform serving up a customer survey to see how, again, to me, I don't care for that. I understand from a feedback loop why that could be important, but for me, in terms of sales, I don't need the borrowers looking at anything else besides my phone number when I call them. I don't want them worrying about a survey. I want them filling out the 5 questions. Management wants it. Yeah. Okay. That's cool. Good for them. I'm not worried about that. Again, this is my mortgage company. I'm not worried about surveys. I'm worried about results. If they need feedback from the borrowers on the application, again, that's totally fine. I don't want to dissuade you from doing that. It's just not my focus. When it comes into what is in my focus, though, is when it comes into the Encompass web, where'd that sucker go? There it is. When it comes into the Encompass web, what I want my sales team to really focus in on is the cadence of follow-up. And so when we get into the Encompass web, what I want to make sure that the teams have is while they're in the file managing their tasks, I want to make sure that they've got the ability to quickly qualify. So for those that have already seen this, I've been showing this now for, I feel like, a year. But this is a card-based view in Encompass Web, and this is part of there's a free course I have in the community. If you haven't seen that yet, check it out. It's using Encompass Web for sales. And this is where I really focus in on what do I want to grab from the borrower very quickly. If anything, if the borrower gives me authorization to run the credit, great. How did they do that? And what is the basic information so I can order the credit report? So I'm totally with you, Candace. I appreciate the question on the survey thing. What I want my team to be able to do is fly through these loans very quickly. And when it comes to Encompass, obviously, there really is nothing quicker to open and close files than web, because I can come back in here to my task list and I can move on to the next task. So these are some general concepts of moving through, making sure that, again, when we come in to update a task, I've got the ability to manage this task. And then I also have the ability to create additional tasks on the fly, depending on what I'm doing. Also with Encompass Web, obviously, we've got our automated functionality to go in there, but we also have the ability to come into the e-folder. For those that didn't know this, we obviously have the ability to do e-folder pop-out now. And so on web, that's possible. Hopefully condition pop-out will be coming soon. And that's where we can do additional manual requests. I just want to reinforce for everybody in this workshop series that when you go and you're looking at this as an administrator, I want you to remember what I was showing you earlier, which is define the workflow of what your sales team needs to do to go from initial contact to the next part of our workshop, which is really pre-qualifying and working that borrower through their credit and their pricing scenarios. And so we're going to talk more about, in the next workshop, we're going to talk more about leveraging the opportunities and how that works. And then also leveraging other functionality within the loan file. And specifically getting into, I guess that's not going to let me do that, you sucker. Specifically getting into how to run our qualification tools and things of that nature within Encompass Web versus having to open up desktop. So there's one last part I wanted to kind of go through here with you to give you some ideas about what we've been talking about today. Obviously, the ability to create custom fields to track lead source campaign owner. These are things that, again, if we wanted to update in our summary form while we're working that lead, you might want to do that if that's part of their work. You also, if it's a workflow task, remember that if the workflow task is to manage that particular information, we can create that in the input form here in that task workspace. Right? Don't make them go to an input form. Just put it right here in the task workspace for that. Right? That's an easy way to track this information if it's not coming in natively. Same thing with lead assignments, right? One of the things that we can do with Encompass Web, which I didn't really talk about the first time I passed here, was in the workflow rule, we can also get in and do automated role assignment, right? So if our triggering is loan created, then our condition is whatever it is. One of the results, again, is that assign role. So we can go in and pick this loan officer, and we can pick specific users based upon whatever. If I had a user group set up for this role, the user group radio button would be available too. So automatically assigning loans over from one to another based upon any number of situations. Maybe it's the age of the lead that you then transfer it to somebody maybe more experienced, maybe less experienced. I don't know. But the ideas of automatic role assignment native to Encompass, super helpful. Another idea is maybe you only want somebody to follow up on leads. Maybe they're just an appointment setter. You know, maybe you've got a whole series of people that are just dialing for dollars. They're not able to actually interview the borrower. They're not able to actually talk about rates or anything. They're just trying to get a hold of somebody without using a predictive dialer or without using robocalls. Pardon me, guys. Some of the other things that are in here, again, implement mobile-friendly lead forms with direct routing. This is something third-party-ish, but you can have your own team leverage information that drives people directly to your Consumer Connect site. One of the other things that I thought was really interesting on this list was to also do a create quick look soft prequals. So what would be really interesting is if you were going through Encompass and you developed a workflow rule, if you allowed them to run a credit on a soft pull to get the score into the file, what can you do with that? Right? Can you send out a letter that says, hey, congratulations, we've assigned you over to our team that helps you get prepared for your mortgage. Those are the people that don't have a credit score that meets the minimum requirements. So totally positive workflow, totally positive momentum. They don't know what their score is. You do. And you just direct them to folks who are maybe getting into deeper. Maybe they've got another borrower. Maybe they've got somebody else to help them get that mortgage. Versus somebody who actually hits a minimum score for that prequal. Now you can send them whatever you want through the workflow rules like we've talked about. So those are some concepts there. And then again, when we talk about leveraging native Encompass, think about using dashboards. So when we're talking about, I've been talking about web this whole time, but there is functionality to where if we go into desktop, there could be a situation here where you want to really, from a sales perspective, exploit a dashboard instead of thinking about dashboards just for things like disclosures or operations. Think about a dashboard for your sales team and a way to disseminate between people that have just maybe basic applied, or maybe they've had credit run. Think about ways to leverage Encompass desktop, not just web, when you're working with your teams. And then as we look as an admin, just some configuration ideas that you can think about implementing. So, again, custom fields we talked about, the workflow rules we talked about, the persona we talked about. This idea of milestones being specific for leads, a lot of folks will distinguish between a file started and a file not yet disclosed, but somewhere in between. Maybe that's an important thing for you. In terms of the input form sets, again, this is something whether you're thinking about desktop or web, you can address that. Reports are static information, but they can be useful if you want to really understand large swaths of data that don't necessarily appear very clearly on a dashboard or a pipeline view. Obviously, we talked a lot about Consumer Connect. Alerts is not meant to mean the alert, right? I don't want you to think about that. I want you to think about constructive notification on how to notify loan officers or the people who are going to reach out to that borrower very quickly. Hey, we've got somebody to talk to. And then again, how do we get that information in? If you do have any other parts, obviously we do have APIs that can be feed information in. I'm still going to leverage, no matter how I get that lead in, whether it's from Consumer Connect, right, from one place or another, I'm still going to leverage everything that's in my Encompass native to drive that work. If it's my company that I'm building from scratch today, 2025. So if it's your company, the whole point of this workshop today is if it's your company, name me something, anybody who's on here, name me something that you think has to be done by a third-party platform that's mission critical for your organization. Something that I could have talked about, something maybe I didn't talk about that you're like, yeah, but Larry, like survey, right? Candace had a note of survey. Sean had a note of, we want to do something that is giving a unique link to agents for some workflow reason. These are all interesting use cases that are not going to be applicable to everyone. Naturally, I'm not going to dissuade you if your business finds value in that. You should do that as long as you're creating value. The reason why I have a thing about the survey in particular is because it's valuable to management. It's not valuable to borrowers. So I'm not really for it in the sales process. You want to do it while loan's in process or even after closing, I totally get it. But we're in the sales mode and everything's got to produce one more incremental step towards success. That's why I want to leverage everything native and really exploit what we're already paying for. Is there anything else that anybody's talking about or using in your company that, again, you feel like can only be done via third party or along those lines? Okay, so when we get into the rest of the workshop, I do want to bring up one last thing, and as we end up here, the events in here are split out. So we're going to go through, obviously, pre-qualification, pre-approvals, and early wins. I'm going to talk a lot about the pre-qualification tools, the opportunities that are in there, and how to get through those. Well, then we're going to get into borrower docs and initial disclosures in doc prep. So this is going to talk a lot about how to configure your one-click disclosure readiness, as well as disclosure automation. And it's also going to talk a lot about what to do with Reg B. Like I've been talking a lot about that. When we get into August, we'll get into processing and underwriting, some of the best practices for what I would do. Moving into September, then we'll go through your secondary workflows and how that really works today through Native Encompass, regardless of what PPE you're using. Same thing goes for ICDs and compliance readiness, things like that. And then we're going to end up the year between October and November, really prepping the files and what we're doing different with Native Encompass that's available through the settings, as well as getting that file ready for closing and delivering those documents and retrieving them. So a lot of this is super heavy into what are we doing that we could be doing differently, especially leveraging the web interface in addition to the desktop interface with the web-based workflow rules and settings. And then the very last part down here in November, we're going to talk about loan level accounting and profitability and analytics. Because after you go through all of this information, the one thing, as Candace does point out, is we want to understand how we're doing. And when we talk about businesses, there's a lot of ways to not keep money that you make. And if you can't figure out where that money is going, then you might as well, you want to look at that. I'll say it that. You just want to really study hard on this. And the way that we get there is by tackling all of these issues first. And so I appreciate everybody coming today to the lead. I don't see any questions. I don't see any other remarks. And so I appreciate everybody being part of the event today. And if you have any questions as you're watching this replay or afterwards, please let me know directly. If you don't have any other questions, feel free to lead out. See what I did there. Okay. Guys, have a great day. Thank you very much. We'll see you.